Okay, I think we're recording. I can always edit this
Yep.
part out. Okay, hi Kyra. Thank you for joining me. I'm so excited to hear about your job, but also your journey to figure out your purpose and your path. So I know I want to just quick intro. You're South Korean, came to the US for college a little over 10 years ago in 2009. And here you are, still educated and working in the US. Tell us a little bit about your current job.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa, for inviting me. My name is Kyra, like Lisa said. I'm a NASA postdoctoral fellow, and I'm currently based at Jet Propulsion Lab. I'm an earth scientist there. And so right now, my research focuses on understanding water and especially groundwater sustainability. We use satellite data and different computer tools like numerical models to better understand how groundwater depletion impacts our society. So that's my current job. Before that, I studied geology in college. And then I also went to grad school where I focused on hydrogeology, which is the study of water and its interaction with other earth processes. And that's how I ended up here.
That's great. So the JPL location is in California, correct?
Yeah, that's in Pasadena, California.
Okay. And I know not everybody might know that. So fascinating. When I first met you on Clubhouse of all places, um, that you're talking about being an earth scientist in NASA, and those are two things that in somebody's brain don't seem to fit together because we think space. So educate, we want to bring this to teens and those who work with teens and their parents so they can better understand careers and pathways. So talk to us about how earth science fits into the work that NASA's doing and what that looks like.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of similarities or overlap in terms of research that happens in space and happens for Earth. So specifically at NASA, we use a lot, if not more, about the same or if not more funding for Earth sciences versus space. Yeah, so when you think of NASA, we're always thinking about looking out to space from Earth, but we also look to Earth from space. So we leverage that unique vantage point of space to understand what's going on Earth, and you can kind of see things holistically because you have that unique vantage point. And a lot of these, as a geologist, what's really exciting is the processes that I studied on Earth are also applicable to other planets, other planetary sciences. And so, for example, we just had a Mars rover landing, the Perseverance, landing. And one of the craters that they chose was because of these hydrologic features. And they saw, okay, for this crater, it seems like there were these hydrologic processes with deltas. Those are the same things that we observe on Earth. And so because we know what's going on Earth and why these geologic formations look that way with the influence of water, we're then able to take pictures and see on Mars, oh, we see something similar on Earth. Maybe that's also a sign of water, right? So there's a big connection in terms of Earth sciences and space or planetary sciences. There's also a parallel in terms of, we have really unique environments on Earth, like hydrothermal vents or deep ocean research. All of these very extreme climate or extreme settings can also translate really well into space environments. And so, yeah, there's a lot of parallel. There's a lot of research for earth sciences as well. I'm also very new to the space realm. I was always more of an earth kid. I was never, I'm a safety nut. And so it scares me, like the concept that you can't breathe out there scares me, but
me
every
too.
day, yeah, every day being around my friends at NASA JPL, I learn more and I learn a lot. And yeah, so earth scientists, there's a lot of earth scientists that work for NASA.
That's fascinating. So when you say there's as much or more funding, we hear people chatter all the time about, oh, the funding for NASA, and we're always thinking space. So that's crazy for us to even conceive of. Would you say, like, as far as number of employees, does NASA have just as many earth sciences or non space roles?
I think that depends on the center. At least for JPL, I could speak to our center. We actually have more engineers than scientists. And I mean scientists in just like all sciences, like planetary, astrobiology, earth sciences, etc. So we have many engineers on lab. I think Goddard has a big earth science crew. In terms of the number of employees, I'm not entirely sure, but in terms of available opportunities and the amount of research effort that's going on for financial support and funding, yeah, there's as heavy of an emphasis on understanding Earth. And people always like to say, oh, why are we sending things to space if we, have all these problems on Earth? And we are actively all trying to, on all fronts to understand our universe. So I think that's a great thing. Yeah.
That's fascinating to me. I want to hear a little bit in a few minutes. I want to back all the way up to like Kyra in high school and what did you think? Because we want to share your journey. But before I get there, so you go to college and you're studying geology. So when you were at that point, you probably didn't look way far ahead and think like, I'm going to work for NASA someday. Yeah. And maybe even back then you were like me and you thought NASA was all about space.
Yeah.
Right. As a 20-year-old, who knew, right? So talk to us a little bit about, you're in your undergrad studying geology, and then we'll back up a little bit more in a minute. What are the careers that, as you looked at your peers, that they were considering? Was everybody going to go on to grad school? Where did your peers from undergrad land? What are the different jobs that we might see somebody with an undergrad in geology going into?
Yeah. Let's see. So with geology, think of it really broadly, because I think that opens doors to so many different earth science careers, and non-earth science careers for that matter. So with a degree in geology, which is just the study of earth and its processes, you could land something, you could pursue research and go to grad school, which is what I did. And within that, there are like subdivisions. We could talk about that. And then a lot of my friends, because I went to school in Texas, they went into oil and gas and energy industry. And people often like to associate, like really negative things with, these oil and gas companies because of this carbon emission. But the fact of the matter is we still need a lot more talent to make these energy processes better. There's also the regulatory side of oil and gas. And so a lot of my friends stepped into a career that way. And then the other part is consulting. So we have a lot of environmental problems and environmental issues that need experts to come in and look at the data and give advice to, companies or other people trying to do business there. So we have environmental consultants that you could go into with the geology degree. A little bit different. You could also go into gemology. So that's actually my other hobby and passion.
Oh, fun.
Yeah,
you know what? We talk a lot in our program about like passions. Not every passion has to define your purpose. We have a lot of passions, right? So we have to choose a purpose, but we've got a lot of passions that can exist too. So some of your peers then took like a gemology passion and turned it actually into their purpose, where your purpose ended up being research science, but you still have this passion about gemology.
Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful way that you put it. For gemology, which is just, the study of gems and, jewelry design. So it's a broadly defined field, but geology is the study of how these minerals are created and formed. And so on the science side, you learn, okay, how are emeralds formed, or how are diamonds formed? What pressure and temperature condition does the earth come together to create this mineral or this rock? So we study this in class, and then gemology would be taking that and taking it a little bit more further in a specific, for jewelry or fine luxury art, things like that. So gemology is another career track, and I actually have someone from my cohort who, is working for Gemological Institute of America.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, so she really took that path, and I'm really proud of her. I'm jealous that she gets to look at pretty things all day.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Pretty expensive things as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think those are some of the career paths that my friends took. And of course, there are other things I think you could do. You could be a scientific writer. If you wanted to go more into outreach, it's always helpful to have a scientific background and
Mhm.
then go into maybe the outreach portion. Um, I personally thought I was going to go to law school after this, after a geology degree. Yeah,
So
because
you thought that that's so interesting. I mean, I say to my students all the time, for law school, you could get any
any
undergraduate
degree,
degree,
right?
and you
Mhm.
need to do well in your undergrad program, keep your grades up, do well in the LSAT, and build a nice resume, and the door's open to anybody. I don't think that I've ever thought of like somebody who had an interest in geology
Yeah.
thought that perhaps they would go into law school. So tell us why you thought you would go to law school and then what changed.
Yeah. So maybe we could back up to
Yeah,
high school.
that's
Yeah. So
perfect.
yeah. Okay. So when I went to high school, I went in think not really having a direction, and so I want to encourage the high schoolers who feel like they don't know what they want to do for college or school or career. Like, it's okay, because I was like that too.
I think
I
that's the norm, right? I
Yeah,
think it's
and
more
I think
of
there's so
them
much
than,
pressure, right? To
yeah.
have to decide. It's so hard. And
Well, not only
um,
is it the pressure to decide, but like it's timeline driven, right? Like high school is going to end. We can't put it off.
yeah.
It's not like, oh, I can do that later. Like it's coming. And so you have to give it some attention. And it's okay to not know
Mhm.
where when you start that
Where you're,
process.
yeah, where you want to go or where you're going. But that was certainly me. So I went to a foreign language high school in Korea. And the way the Korean education system is built, it kind of separates you into either the humanities quote unquote major or a STEM track. So I guess a humanities track or a STEM track. And so the courses that you take in high school is already starting to diverge depending on which emphasis you have. Things were a little bit different for me because I was in the foreign language high school and I was an English major. And so the predominant push was for me to get into a college in an English speaking country, and not in Korea, right? So I was already prepping myself to go abroad for college. But all of the courses that I took were humanities related. So it was like econ, economics, a lot of literature, history, and a lot of my friends wanted to be, diplomats or
Ah,
political figures, lawyers. And so I was very influenced by that. And all the courses that I was taking was, aligned with that kind of humanities track. So I never thought about science actually. I was actually quite bad at science and math.
as the NASA research scientist,
Yeah,
I
so
was
I just
bad at science and math. I
it,
love your story.
I know I was really bad. So the story I told was that when I first entered high school, my first math score was like it was like, I think I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. I think it was like 30 something. It was like out of 100. So
Oh,
it was terrible. And what was worse, it was a recap of all of the middle school material, like our first midterm. And I was like, oh wow, I really didn't study for this one. Like,
like
and then
where was I during middle school? Huh.
I know. So I was like, wow, I really didn't. I I wasn't too serious about my studies in
Mhm.
high school, honestly, and I got a little bit more serious in college. But I have too many, I guess, passions that I want to like go explore and have fun. And then I finally come back. I'm like, oh no, there's a test tomorrow. So but you can still make it. You make it work, right? And then you learn what works for you. You learn to be more efficient. But the second test, which was our semester final for the math exam, I got 100 because I was like, oh, I can't have these scores. I really need to, yeah,
Right.
I really need to be intentional about this. I'm not a math prodigy, so I actually I'm someone who needs to put in time and work. And I got 100, and then the teacher called me and said, like, how does this happen? You know, he thought I cheated on the exam. I said, well,
He's like,
I'm the only person who got 100. Like, I can't remember if it was like the only one in the classroom, or it was just like around me, like no one around who was sitting around me at the time had gotten
so he's
100.
like, where did that come from? Because if you cheated, I don't know how you
Then
did
yeah, you couldn't
it.
have gotten 100, or I'm very lucky, right? And
Right.
so, and I told him like I really studied hard, and we had like a heart to heart chat. And since then, like throughout all 3 years of my high school, he really looked out for me. So he would, you know, I always went to his office hours. I would ask him
Right.
questions, so he understood that math wasn't intuitive for me, but I would work hard, and I would, you know, I would excel in class because I put in the time. Same thing with chemistry. I was bad at chemistry. But then the teacher really like took me under his wing and made sure like, okay, like this is how you should study for it, and kind of coached me in that way. Because I
And you
kept
were
asking,
super intentional. I mean, and I
yeah,
say this to high schoolers a lot of times, like you can do it, and you might just need to be more intentional. You know, time is our greatest resource. It's non-renewable, so sometimes we just have to devote the time. So
yeah,
it sounds like your intentionality really paid off.
it really did. It really did. Just coming to the fact that, oh, okay, this is not something that clicks fast for me. You know, other people might be excelling at it, but for me, I needed to actually go to their office hours, go talk to them, spend outside time out, you know, outside of school. But I could see the results little by little, like incremental changes. And so that really encouraged me. But the whole time I didn't really care, because I thought I was going to go be a lawyer. I was, you know, in like literature classes and econ and law and government. And funny enough, I don't think I retained a lot of that either, you know? And
Right.
so, I think I was always maybe meant for science. So I thought I was going to be a lawyer because I was really drawn to this issue of human rights. And two things that I really wanted to explore more was human rights law and environmental law. And I couldn't choose, but I just figured, oh, after I go to school and after I finish law school, I get to kind of choose what I like. And so I was always interested in that aspect. And then senior year of high school, my government and law teacher said, oh, like there's this attorney that is looking for an intern. Like, would you like to go work with her for a little bit just to see what goes on in the law firm? And so I said, yeah, that sounds great. And I started interning, and it was very different from what I imagined. I think everyone thinks of that dramatic court scene in a movie
Oh, for sure.
where like they deliver the final like, your honor, you know, and everything
Right.
is great. But a lot of the daily tasks of a lawyer is a lot of phone calls, a lot of meetings, a lot of reading, and a lot of writing, and very stressful, right? In terms of semantics, like you have to be very exact with your words. And so I was in charge of kind of looking over the typos and kind of seeing what they do, learning about these things. And I realized maybe this is not for me. You know, maybe I'm not very good at this.
I love that you basically did job shadowing, which part of my framework for helping guide teens and young adults is, first of all, know yourself. But once we kind of have defined myself, meaning like my values, my academic profile, I actually can do math if I try. My motivations, my passions, my behavioral strengths, things like that. Then we have to know careers. And I always say we have to be intentional around creating experiences instead of just hearing about, or like you said, oh, that drama in the courtroom looks fun.
It's an illusion, right? That I
Yeah,
didn't
I
think it
say
was an
all
illusion.
the time, if I'm looking at a student who says, I think I might want to be an attorney, and they say, I absolutely hate English, I'm like, whoa, 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 we need to have a conversation.
Yeah.
I want you to go to a law firm, job shadow, interview attorneys. So that, oh gosh, is such a great example of what we tell students they need to do. Like, let's get in front of people to see it. And so when you saw it in action, you're like, whoa, not
Yeah, and I think it's great to have coaches like you then to tell people that, or like open opportunities for these job shadowing things to happen. So I've been certainly the beneficiary of very generous people who gave up their time and space so I could see these things in action. And when I
You're
and
giving
even
back now too, which we love. Like
yeah,
I tell teens all the time, I'm like, people who love their jobs are more than happy to talk
to
about
share, yeah.
teens, figure out if it would be their fit. Like just ask. We even give in our program like framework for email templates to do the ask.
Oh,
And
okay,
the
that's
ask can
cool.
be hard, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, so you benefited, you're giving back. So you decide law's not probably going to be for me. And is that when you chose geology?
well, I still kind of had it in the back of my mind. I just thought, okay, well, maybe if I actually did the schooling, I would change my mind, or maybe like it, I was going back and forth. And then the attorney actually suggested, she said, well, you said you wanted to do environmental law, so why don't you get a science degree and then go to law school? And then we'll see, if you have the same mind frame,
Right.
mindset by then. And so I said, oh, that's not a bad idea. And she said, it'll set you apart because everyone is in the humanities, gets a degree in English or history, and then goes to law
Yep.
school most often. And that's when I realized a lot of these environmental issues are contextualized in human rights. So we want people to have clean access to clean water, clean air, but it's not always the case. So environmental issues are very like human rights driven. And so I said, okay, that sounds like a great idea. So I did take the LSAT and everything. Just that was I took it in high school because I was also looking at law schools in England, and they have an actual law degree for undergrad, and it's not like the
Okay.
US where you have to get your bachelor's and go to law school. So I did take the LSAT, and that's when I was like, okay, this is also something I have to put work in, kind of like math and science. So it seems like studying is an intuitive or like second nature to me. But I took the LSAT, so I got, acclimated to the system. And then I decided, okay, I will try this law thing, but with a science degree. So that's when I went into geology. And I really liked it. I didn't expect to fall in love with it, but I did. I was really good at it. It's a very applied science, I will say that,
Mhm.
which means you have to have a little bit of everything in your toolbox. That's kind of like how I am as a person. You have to be a good artist to understand or draw the things that you see in the field. You have to have spatial thinking, 3D, that was also something I had to work at,
I mean, do
spatial.
you feel like if a teenager's listening to you right now and they go
Yeah.
like, well, I'm awful at drawing,
Yeah.
do you feel like they can become adept at it enough, like they can
Oh,
practice,
absolutely.
learn?
Yeah.
So it doesn't have
Absolutely.
to be a natural artist, but know that you're going to use some of those skills. You need
Yeah,
that.
yeah. If you're an artist, that's a big plus. But if you're not, it's okay. I've had some of my friends draw. T- I'm not gonna name names, but some of them, I looked at them. I'm like, what is this? But as long as you're capturing the big characteristics, like this is the scale, like this is the scale at which I'm drawing. These are the characteristics that stood out. So as long as you're a good note taker in that, and obviously, as you move forward in your career, you're going to be using those less and less because you'll be more reliant on high tech, like software programs that will do the drawing for you. But as long as you can kind of get the idea, and make sure, you could
It
use
doesn't
certain,
have to be pretty.
no, but it's a plus, but no, it's
Yeah.
okay. So yeah, and then I went to UT for geology, and that's when I realized I'm really good at it. Again, had really good mentors that
Yeah.
said, oh, Kyra, you are actually pretty good at this. You should stay in the sciences.
And then,
So
so then you're finishing grad school, and so you land at NASA with this postdoc fellowship.
yeah,
But what were other options then of those that you were in your grad program with? Where did people go?
after grad school.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I started my PhD because, well, I thought I was only going to get a master's. So I've changed a lot, right? I thought I was just going to do a master's. The reason I did a master's was because I wasn't ready to go into a real like adult job. And I was like, "Ugh, I feel like I need to learn more. I don't know what to do yet. So let me just make more time for myself." And so I went to grad school, decided that maybe I'll just finish my studies. If you get a master's, and at the master's level, again, you could go into a consulting job. I had friends who went into like scientific recruiting. So yeah, so companies will need, expert scientists to spot the talent in other people when there's a big research lab or some kind of consulting. And so they've gone into that position as well. They've gone into regulatory positions through government. And then if you go to a PhD, that also means you have a very like specific expertise skill set. And so oftentimes if you're in the academic track, then you'll go into postdoctoral research, and then you could go be a university professor, so that's the academic track. Or you could go into a research lab and do research for your job where, there's a certain project that you're associated with, and you could propose certain things. Oh, I've thought about this, and I think this is something that we need to figure out. I could see a way for it to make it work. So you're doing experiments and doing these big thought experiments as well to, get proposals. So you could go into a research institution. And so that's kind of what I'm doing, right? So I've decided I wanted to do more research. I'm at JPL, which is a full-time research facility, and it's not like a university setting. But we are partnered with Caltech, California Institute of Technology. So not partnered, it is part of Caltech. It's a weird structure because it's both NASA and Caltech. Yeah, and so, I also have a chance to work with students and interns through that.
So the Caltech students are even undergrad, are they involved in your?
Yeah, even undergraduate students. I have had interns that were in undergrad that were, post undergrad. Some grad students also I worked with, like master's level, PhD level. Yeah, so it's a really wide spectrum.
Did you do research during your undergrad at all?
I did. And I think part of that was what really helped me understand that I could do research for a living. It was, now I sound like a overachiever. I wanted to do everything and like shadow to everybody, but part of it was practical. Like I needed a job during college. I wanted to, help support myself. And so I did research. And that's when I realized a lot of my skills sets that were maybe not useful in real life. Like I'm really good with chopsticks, right? Or like I'm really agile with my hands, but those things were valuable when you're doing these biological experiments or chemical experiments where it's like quickly transfer things and, wash, 300 vials in an hour, like things like that you do with your hands that was maybe not useful in like just studying were useful. And I was like, this is so fun. You create a system for yourself in the lab and you're, running multiple experiments at once. And that was really fun for me.
So sort of that like undergrad research almost felt like, well, yes, you needed a job and you needed to make some money in your undergrad, but it was almost like the ultimate job shadow, right?
Yeah.
So you had to test drive it before you had to commit to that. What would you say as we're wrapping up, because I want to be so respectful of your time, you're so generous for us. What would you say, like when you think of being a research scientist, what would you say, like, here are some key qualities of people that I think would enjoy and thrive in that environment?
Yeah. I would say intellectual curiosity for one. You want to figure it out. And it's okay if that, wanes at times. I always think I'm not as curious as I should be. I have this laissez-faire kind of attitude sometimes when experiments fail, like, oh, well, Earth is still going to do its thing, whether I figure it out or not. So it becomes a little bit of a hurdle, but I still want to know and I still, want to learn. So having that intellectual curiosity and drive really helps shape it. And then, I think it's one of those jobs that could take on both people who are kind of the jack of all trades, and also people who are, skilled experts at one very narrow thing. So there's a lot of different caveats and there's a different room for everybody. So if you're the jack of all trades person, kind of like I am, where I love all of these different hobbies, you can still figure out how to make all of that work in a research setting. because there's so many aspects related to it. You have to be a good communicator and a good writer. It helps to be a good artist when you're making these graphs and figures. It helps to be a good storyteller to write these proposals. But if you're very technically advanced in one narrow thing, that works too, because then you're going to be this brilliant person who's driving a lot of the technical effort in a research setting. So that is one. And then I guess lastly, good time management skills, which you eventually develop, I think, just going through life. That's something that I always struggle with as well, but that helps as well, just because our work is so punctuated by either semesters or deadlines, right? So like trying to be on top of that.
Yeah.
And I was joking with my other colleagues the other day. I was always this planner and I'm always punctual, but I've started to miss deadlines, and we're saying, oh, now you're finally a professional researcher. Like with all of these deadlines.
We've arrived. Kyra's arrived.
Yeah, she's finally dropping balls. That means she's like actually a professional researcher.
We've been waiting for this.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, but I think research in general, whether it's earth science or anything else, is a very broad field. It's very fun because you get to kind of come up with your own questions and then you get to drive them. You also get to collaborate with a lot of people, having that, humility that you're not always going to know every answer or every part of the answer. So asking people like, how do you think we should figure this out? That part is really fun for me.
So that's good. Like the collaboration part is huge. So sometimes I think when I'm talking to teens, I hear them say like, they feel like they would be isolated in a lab by themselves.
No.
And I'm like, no, I think it's collaborative. And so
really
okay, super collaborative. Is it but it's probably not constant interaction though either, right?
No, and I think that's the beauty of it, so even if you don't know everything, there's someone who knows it, and that's the fun part, right? It's like, oh, well, I'm gonna ask my friend whoever and call them and say, hey, you want to work with me? But there's times where you have to sit down and just write your paper or write your proposal, so it can have that alone time as well. Or if you're brainstorming, right, sometimes that's done in a group setting. Sometimes people best brainstorm when they're alone and they're out in nature or wherever they get their inspiration from.
So it's truly like an ambivert job. It's not, you're raging extroverts who want all people all the time. It's not that, but it's also not, you're not flying solo.
Yeah, I think you can make it whatever you want it to be. If you want it to just be in the extroverted side and do more collaborative efforts and only like go out and build bridges and be social, and then maybe leave the other sides to other people who are more introverted, like you could do that. You can make it anything that you want.
There's a fit for everyone. So it fits a wide variety of people.
Yeah.
I love
so maybe that's not the best advice when we're trying to target.
I don't think we are trying to target. I think it's good for students to hear that these preconceived ideas that we sometimes have, just like the drama of the courtroom, are not always correct. And so I love that we can hear this. And so really they could talk to probably 5 different research scientists who are, you're going to find one who is that raging extrovert who's going to be collaborating and engaging with people all the time. You're going to see everybody on that continuum. I mean, I always think of, we do have a personality assessment that we use as just a data point on personality, but I think of everything on the line of a continuum. And so it's like on the social energy continuum, there really would be a place for everybody when it comes to research.
Yeah, I agree.
It's so cool. Any parting words for our teens and specifically our girls in STEM? I know that you and I are Instagram friends, and is that the best place where people could find you, by the way?
Yeah, or they can email me. I could give you a couple email addresses as well for you to link maybe to the interview.
I will do that for yes. And what is I forget your Instagram username.
What she wore to science.
She wore to science. I love it.
She wore to science.
So with that, what she wore to science, let's give some parting advice to girls about STEM, women in STEM. You always have that hashtag on your Instagrams.
Yeah, I love it. It's a big passion of mine specifically geology, where, you know, there's a lot of physical activity involved. We have to be really fit to do a lot of these field courses. It could be challenging for people that are not fit, which was me growing up. Also with like heavy lifting in the field that you have to do, it could be really challenging for women who are maybe not as strong. You know, and I think it's great that we have this cultural shift of like, we're seeing more strong women and like fit women, and it's not no longer this like dainty ideal. And that was especially strong in like East Asian culture where I was growing up, but it's changing rapidly. And everyone's very collaborative, right? Everyone's very inclusive. And so even if you have, let's say, certain physical limitations or disabilities, like we're always helping each other on the field, and it's a collaborative effort. So I love that. So don't be afraid to try these things and go for it. And I think having girls and women in STEM bring a certain aspect that was missing before. Like, for example, like I was mentioning before, I think women tend to be more multifaceted in terms of their hobbies. And so we have engineering women that are not just into that engineering culture of like computers and games and anime. They also bring other aspects, like, oh, they could be also great dancers, and, you know, they may like rugby, and there's a variety of hobbies that they also bring into this very traditionally unilateral culture. There are studies on this on social science where we're seeing that shift kind of in terms of that demographic in STEM, because more women are going in. And so I would say don't be afraid. Also, you know, the preconceived notion that scientists are always in a white lab coat in a lab, kind of like what you were mentioning, doing all these things. And part of my passion for my Instagram page is bringing that to the forefront and saying, oh, well, actually sometimes, but not always, you know. Being a woman in STEM, like sometimes I am in a hard hat out on the beach covered in mud, you know, and with like a, you know, those safety high visibility, like
right, that beautiful orange.
Like I could look like a construction worker in the morning, and then, you know, in the middle of the day, I might be in that like lab coat with like, you know, experiments, gloves and everything, safety glasses in the lab. But then over the weekends, you know, I may be at a outreach event or a conference, and I might be dressed in business casual, or, you know, if I'm, you know, so I'm trying to show these multifaceted aspects of science and me as a person, as a woman in science. And so, yeah, I would be happy to chat with anybody if they need advice. My website is kyrakim.com. So usually even if my email changes, I have my website up and running.
You know where to find you.
And they could, yeah, link me through that. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. You have been a huge blessing to us today.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for your time. You've taught us a lot. I've learned a ton. So thank you for your generosity.
Thank you, Lisa. This was really fun. I hope this helps somebody. And yeah, one last thing, I guess. I tried law one more time actually in college. Yeah. So I was like, maybe I just need to do a different type of law. And so my other passion was music. And so I did get a dual degree in music in undergrad. And I took courses in copyright law. So like music copyright law. And that was what really solidified, like, I can't do this.
Like I tried it one more time.
And I still have like a big, I'm always interested in like the legal procedure, and like reading the fine print. So I'm that person who reads the fine print just for fun and sees like, oh, how did they say it? But I could never do it for a job. So I have a lot of respect for lawyers, and especially like.
I do. I think it's one of the most misunderstood jobs, which makes me think I need to get a lawyer to interview. So.
Yeah, that would be really fun. I think that would be really great. I would love to see that interview too. So
great. I will let you know. Well, again, you're so generous. Thank you.
No problem.